She thought it would work like it always did. The soft retreat. The sudden emotional distance. That vague coldness dressed as indifference. It wasn't anger, and it wasn't goodbye. It was a test. Wrapped in silence. She expected you to reach out, to question, to unravel a little. She expected a crack, but you didn't flinch. You didn't overthink. You didn't chase. You didn't ask why she was acting different. You simply stayed calm. Calm in the storm she thought she could stir. That's when something inside her shifted, because in that moment, she realized she wasn't in control anymore. Most men fold under that pressure. They fall into overexplaining, overcompensating, trying to fix something that was never really broken. Just stretched to see what would snap. But you stood still. And in that stillness, something far more powerful happened than any argument or apology could spark. She broke. Character. That mask, the one she wears to test, to shield, to control, cracked. Not out of anger, not out of guilt, but out of sudden awareness. She realized this wasn't the script she expected. You weren't the man she could predict. You weren't reacting. You were responding by not responding at all. And in that stillness, she felt something she didn't expect to feel. Respect, curiosity, even fear. Because she wasn't dealing with a boy. Anymore, she was standing in front of a man. It always starts in whispers, a slower reply, a shorter laugh. That once natural warmth now delivered with caution. You feel it before you understand it, a shift in her rhythm. The soft pullback that speaks louder than anything she could say. She used to light up when you walked in. Now, she simply looks not cold, but calculated. As if she's watching, waiting, measuring something. This is the moment where most men lean in, but you leaned back. You didn't ignore it, you noticed, but you didn't let it define your energy. You moved slower, spoke less, allowed space, because instinctively you knew this wasn't rejection. It was observation. She was watching your core, not your words, not your smile, your foundation. The part of you that doesn't move when her emotions do, and that's rare. Most men break into performance at this point. They try to remind her why she liked them. More compliments, more attention, more effort. But effort, when fueled by fear, smells like weakness. And she can smell it from miles away. You didn't take the bait. You stayed present, but unshaken. Focused, but not reactive. The silence between you wasn't something to fill. It was something to respect. She noticed that. She noticed the way you didn't shrink. It's the way you didn't fumble for her warmth or seek reassurance from her tone. You let her change. Stayed unchanged in that. Said everything. Because she wasn't looking for a man to chase her emotions. She was hoping to find a man who didn't need them to stay centered. And the moment you held that posture, without trying to fix the shift, the moment you didn't flinch, you became unforgettable. You noticed the distance. How could you? Not one day, she's sending voice notes full of laughter. The next, her replies are dry. Her eyes look past you, and her energy feels off. Not angry. Just absent, and for a moment it stung. You wondered if you did something wrong. Maybe you said too little, or said too much. Your mind offered a dozen explanations. But your body, your instincts, told you something different. This wasn't random, it was intentional. She wasn't trying to hurt you. She was trying to see you. Because somewhere deep in her feminine core, she needed to know, is this man real, or just responsive to my affection? So she retreated. She folded her warmth back into herself. Not to reject you, but to create the silence in which your truth could emerge. Would you rush in? Would you panic? Would you beg to keep her close? Or would you stay still, not as a tactic, but as a truth? You didn't know it then, but this was never about her losing interest. It was about her watching you without the lens of her validation, stripped of praise, stripped of ease, stripped of warmth. And that's when your response mattered most. You stayed present, but not performative. You didn't chase. You didn't explain. You didn't try to make it right. You simply let her be and let yourself remain. Not because you didn't care, but because you weren't going to compromise your center to earn her clarity. That's the part she didn't expect. Most men get smaller when she steps back. You Didn't you become still, and in that stillness, her test lost its power? Because what do you do when a man doesn't take the bait? She didn't retreat because she lost interest. Retreated because she got curious about whether your strength was situational or spiritual. Curious whether your confidence lived in her approval or existed long before she ever smiled your way. You see, most women don't pull back because they're done. They pull back because they want to feel safe. It's not in the traditional sense, but emotionally, energetically. She wants to feel that you won't be shaken by her waves, that you won't collapse when she turns inward, because if your confidence dies the moment her affection does, it was never confidence at all. She needed to see that, and the only way to see it was to step away. She didn't need more of your words. She needed less of your performance, and when she pulled back, it wasn't punishment, it was a scan. She needed to know if you could hold your center when hers dissolved, if you'd still breathe easy when the warmth left the room. Value your pace, your gravity was real. So she shifted. Not to break you, but to feel you. And when you didn't flinch, something in her recalibrated. Because she'd seen men chase. She'd seen them explain, overextend, panic into overconnection. But you didn't collapse, you didn't perform, you didn't fill the silence. You just stood still, unapologetically calm, quiet, grounded, and that did something far deeper than proving your worth. It revealed. It's because she wasn't looking for dominance or control. She wasn't testing your ability to chase. She was testing your ability to stand. And when she realized she couldn't knock you off center, not with words, not with silence, not even with absence, that's when the mask began to crack. Not because you failed, but because you passed a test. She didn't even realize she said, "This is the moment where most men fall apart." Not because she leaves, but because she leans back. She stops initiating. She stops affirming. She stops making it easy. And for most men, that silence feels like rejection. It pokes at something unhealed, a deep old fear of not being enough unless someone is clapping. So they respond the only way they know. How, with panic disguised as love, they text more, they compliment more, they try harder. They think their effort is romantic, but to her, it's exposure. She sees the need behind the niceness, the fear behind the attention, the brokenness behind the validation seeking, and slowly, the respect dies, because she didn't want more effort. She wanted more evidence. Evidence that your presence isn't tied to her mood, that your rhythm isn't set by her responses, that your masculinity isn't a performance, it's a presence. When men fail this test, they shrink, they negotiate. They explain their worth with paragraphs, and they ask to be seen, instead of knowing they already are, by themselves. But you didn't spiral into proving? You didn't reach for emotional reassurance? You didn't chase her attention like it was oxygen. You let her breathe. And more importantly, you let yourself breathe. In doing nothing, you did everything. Because the moment a man tries to rescue connection at the cost of his center, he loses. Both. But when he lets the storm come and simply refuses to shake, something primal shifts. She no longer sees someone chasing her emotions. She sees a man rooted in his own. And that's when the test becomes regret. It's not because he failed to chase, but because he proved he never had to. She never wanted you to. Chased, not really. The truth is, she hoped quietly, secretly, that when she pulled back, you would stay exactly as you are. Grounded, calm, present. Still, because the feminine is always drawn to the masculine that holds its shape, not the man who shifts with every emotion, but the one who watches the storm pass and remains rooted in his own weather. She pulled away. To feel your silence, she wanted to know. Would he come running, or would he stay regal? Not because she wanted to be neglected, but because she wanted to feel the gravity of your self-respect. She needed to know that your masculinity wasn't dependent on her warmth, that your rhythm wasn't reactive to her distance, that your attention was offered, not negotiated, and when you didn't flinch, something inside her softened. Not immediately, not loudly, but deeply. Because now, she wasn't just watching a man. She was feeling something sacred. A masculine presence that doesn't beg, doesn't perform, doesn't fracture when tension enters the room. You see, her pullback wasn't about power. It was about security. She needed to know if you could handle her chaos, not by fixing it, but by holding your form while it moved. And when you did just that, her testing turned to trust. Because women don't surrender to men who chase them. They surrender to men who don't chase anything, because they already have themselves. That's what she was looking for all along. Not a man who needed her love to feel whole, but a man whose love, when offered freely, felt like home at first. She acted like nothing was wrong. She kept the distance subtle. A delayed reply here, a colder tone there, a slow fade wrapped in casual conversation. It was quiet but calculated, but what she didn't expect is your stillness to echo. Day by day, your silence began to speak louder than any message. It didn't shout. It didn't plead. It didn't reach. It simply existed, unmoved, unbothered, undeniably strong, and in that space, the one she created, she started to feel something she hadn't planned for, her own emptiness. Because without your attention, something felt missing. Not validation, not praise, but presence. She used to feel you. Even when you were quiet, your energy filled the space. But now that energy wasn't chasing her. It wasn't orbiting her mood. It was self-contained, and that terrified her. She started to notice things. You didn't watch her stories, didn't comment on her posts, how your name used to sit at the top of her inbox, and now it didn't. She began to remember moments you didn't even realize mattered. How calm you were when she was storming. How consistent you were when she was pulling away. How unshaken you were when she tried to make you waver. And slowly, the power flipped. She was the one feeling unseen, not because you were playing a game, because you weren't. You were living. You weren't punishing her. You were prioritizing yourself, and that did something she didn't expect. Because your silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like strength, and that kind of energy. It's impossible to forget and even harder to replace. It doesn't hit her all at once. It comes in quiet waves in the stillness of night, in the spaces where your presence used to live. At first, it's just a memory. A glance back at a moment she didn't fully appreciate. A comment you made. The way you stood still when things got messy. Then it grows. She notices the difference between you and every other man since. Ones who reach too fast, laugh too loud, break too easily. And now she feels something deeper than regret. Reverence, because she realizes in hindsight that you weren't cold. You were calm. You weren't ignoring her. You were honoring yourself. You weren't silent to punish her. You were still. Because you had nothing to prove. She remembers how you made her feel, seen without needing to be seen in return. She remembers how you didn't explain your worth. You embodied it. And suddenly, the pull she used to resist becomes the ache she can't explain, not for your attention, but for your energy, for the way you made her feel grounded in your presence, safe in your stillness, humbled by your self-respect. But now, she knows. That moment she thought she had control. That was the moment she lost the one man who didn't need to be chosen to feel whole, and she can't undo it, because once a woman breaks character, once she sees herself reaching for a man who never flinched, never begged, never broke, that image stays with her, not out of guilt, not out of shame, but out of awe. And in her final reflection, when truth rises, you were never just attractive. You were unforgettable. There's a silence that isn't empty. It's full of power. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply is, and in its presence, everything false falls away. That's the kind of man you became. You didn't need a loud voice to be heard. You didn't need approval to feel valued. You didn't need to hold her hand to know you were already holding yourself. And she felt that. She felt it in the way you didn't move when she did. In the way you stayed composed when things got cold. In the way you chose peace over performance, depth over desperation. This path isn't for every man. It's for the few who understand that stillness is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. That letting go is not giving up. It's growing. Up. If that's you, then keep walking with that quiet fire. Keep choosing self-respect over validation. Keep showing up with presence, not performance. Because you're not chasing her. You're becoming him, and the world needs more of that. Not louder men, wiser ones. So stay still, stay grounded, stay unforgettable. She'll feel it. They all will. And that is how you lead.